Hello drummers and fellow YouTubers. Tim Connolly, drummer and drum teacher, coming at you today with a fantastic video, top 10 jazz drummers of all time. These are my top 10 picks. I'd love to see yours. Please comment, like, and subscribe. And tell me your top 10 greatest jazz drummers. Check out my other video, which is top 10 rock drummers, and I have some other top 10s coming soon. So let's get started with the top 10 greatest jazz drummers of all time. Number 10, the great Louis Belson. Louis Belson, of course, of Duke Ellington fame, was a fantastic drummer, one of the very first drummers to utilize double bass playing on stage and actually in their performance. It was very rare. He was very influenced by Joe Jones, also known as Papa Joe Jones. And Louis, of course, fantastic technique, great musicianship, wonderful man. I had the pleasure of meeting him. He said something to me that stood out, and I'll never forget it. Great piece of advice. He said, if I had 10 lifetimes to learn everything that I needed to learn on the drums, that still wouldn't be enough. There's so much. This is such a vast instrument. And, you know, people think it's simple. It is not. And Louis summed it up, and I've never forgotten that. And I want to thank Louis because that really motivated me to think, you know, I'm never going to learn everything on this drums, but I'm sure going to try, and I'm going to have fun trying as well. All right, now we move to number 9 on my top 10 greatest jazz drummers list. Joe Jones, also known as Papa Joe Jones. I just mentioned him in number 10 with Louis Belson, how much he influenced Louis. He influenced everybody. This is the drummer from the famous Count Basie Orchestra. He was one of the very first drummers to keep time on the hi-hat. He was at the very beginning of jazz drumming, and he was one of the ones that established time playing on the hi-hat. He was also one of the pioneers of playing brushes softly and or quietly. That was one of the things that he was also known for. Joe Jones, also one of the happiest drummers. If you can see some videos of Joe performing, you'll see how he seduces the camera. It's unbelievable. He smiles at the camera. He's the happiest drummer, other than Dom Famularo. Joe Jones appears to be the happiest drummer that I have ever seen, for sure. And now moving on to number 8, the legendary Gene Krupa. Of course, Gene, most famous for playing that awesome floor tom groove / solo on Benny Goodman's Sing, Sing, Sing tune. That was an absolutely legendary song, and it was the first song that showcased drums and drumming as almost the main melodic and rhythmic force in the tune. It was also the first time that toms and floor toms specifically was actually even heard in a song. So Gene was responsible for the development of modern day toms and floor toms. So without Gene, we wouldn't have these great sounding drums. So Gene, number 8 in my list. Fantastic. All right, number 7 on the list is one of my absolute favorites, Philly Joe Jones of Miles Davis fame. Philly played through the 50s, mainly with Miles. He played on the Cookin', Relaxin', Workin', Steamin', that whole series of Miles Davis videos. And Philly, I mean, that guy, what a great swing feel he had. Great work between the bass and snare drum, you know, the chatter between the bass and the snare. He was one of the innovators of that. I always loved Philly Joe Jones, his work with Miles. He also played with Bill Evans, Sonny Rollins, John Coltrane. He was prolific in the scene and is definitely important on my list. Number 6, the man, the legend, Joe Morello of Dave Brubeck fame. Joe, of course, coming to fame and fortune, popularity off the tune Take 5 off Dave Brubeck's album. Joe, incredible technique, incredible technician on the drums. He was also one of the first young drummers of his time to be playing in odd time signatures and making it swing like crazy. Check out Take 5, which is in 5/4 time. Check it out. It's just a brilliant, brilliant tune, and it's legendary, and it made Joe famous. We are getting serious now, people. The top 5, you know, I said this in my top 10 rock drummers videos. It's really hard picking these things. I enjoy doing it, it's fun, but it's hard because there's just so many greats, and really what order do you put them in? You know, it's very difficult. So with the top 5, these are the guys that influence me the most, the guys that I can listen to play on anything and love it. Moving along in the list, we are now at the top 5. This is getting really intense now. Top 5. Number 5, Elvin Jones of John Coltrane fame, of course. He also played with many other people as well, but Coltrane is what he's most famously known for. Power, speed, technical ability. You know, he had it all. I mean, some of his 3/4 Latin grooves that were very heavily swung and featured in some of the Coltrane songs. The most famous album that Coltrane put out probably is A Love Supreme, which really features Elvin Jones at his absolute finest and best. That is the best recording to check out Elvin Jones. I love Elvin's playing, and he's inspired me to take Latin and incorporate it into other forms of music, not just jazz, rock, fusion, progressive rock, whatever. Elvin was the man for me that started me on that journey. And now, number 4, the illustrious Art Blakey. The greatest press role of anyone is Art Blakey. What a fantastic jazz drummer Art Blakey was. Featured in his own band, Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. This is a guy that emerged in the 1940s as a very turbocharged hard bop player. Speed, technique, flashiness, incredible skills, all kinds of stick tricks, fun to watch, happy, emotional. This is an all-round exciting player to watch, is Art Blakey. All right, now we are down to the top 3 incredible drummers. Number 3 is I love this guy so much, Max Roach. Incredible player, so musical. Probably the most musical of all of them on the list, to be totally honest. Max he had a drum solo called The Drum Also Waltzes, and that solo is so musical, so fantastic. Again, just drums alone, but you can tap your foot to it and really get into the musicality of the solo. He was the guy that said, you know what, drums is not just an accompanying instrument. You can take drums and feature them and still really enjoy not just the skill of the playing, but the absolute musicality of it all. Max was one of the very first drummers to use the cymbal to emphasize rhythmic pulse and keeping time, not only with the hat, but time on the ride, and definitely throwing down a definitive rhythmic pulse. Max was the guy that got that started. Max is definitely a legendary drummer and one of the most influential to all of us. You know, I encourage all of you, whether you're into jazz music or not, if you're a rock drummer, branch out and check out these great jazz drummers, because all the great rock drummers were influenced by these jazz guys. Almost all of them. You know, if you talk to John Bonham back in the day and you say, hey, John, who influenced you the most? He would say Buddy Rich and Joe Morello, 2 jazz drummers. But listen to Bonham play. It's swung. All his playing is heavily swung. That's the jazz influence. You're not going to necessarily directly hear jazz chops per se, maybe a little bit, but you're definitely going to hear that swing in the feel. All right, now we are down to the top 2. This was very difficult for me because I love them both so much. But as it is a list and it is top 10, I had to come down to my final 2. Tony Williams at number 2. I love Tony Williams. I mean, he was only 17 years old in 1963 when he started playing with Miles Davis. He played on 13 of Miles' albums, Seven Steps to Heaven, Nefertiti, Four and More, and many other recordings. Legendary player. I mean, his cymbal work was probably the best cymbal work of any drummer to this day. Before Tony and after Tony, his cymbal work, that 5-stroke, practically a roll that he would do, utilizing a technique that he developed, the Tony Williams ride technique, which I have a video teaching how to play that. Tony, power, skill, finesse, incredible chops, soloist, accompanist, he had it all. He was, in his day, probably the best drummer on earth when he was at his prime, without a doubt. He was just incredible. So Tony Williams, number 2. Now we are at number 1, but before we get to number 1, I'm just going to give just 3 quick honorable mentions. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we've got Roy Haynes, legendary Roy Haynes. You know, the first time I heard Roy Haynes play, I didn't even understand what he was doing. His drumming was so busy between the bass and snare, plus he's doing all these interesting patterns on the ride cymbal, not just ding, ding, da, ding, ding, da, ding. He was doing all kinds of other things in there as well. Very sort of a forefather of modern jazz drumming, the way that he would play these busy chatter between the snare and bass and accompany it with also equally busy ride cymbal pattern. Just unbelievable, Roy Haynes. So he didn't make the top 10. Honorable mention. Another great honorable mention, the legendary Kenny Clark. He was at the birth of bebop, one of the very first drummers, along with Art Blakey and Max Roach and Philly Joe Jones, all those guys. He was one of the ones that started playing syncopated bass drum, which was unheard of. It was usually just 4 on the floor prior to Kenny. And then when Kenny came along, he's like, well, why can't I play the ding, ding, da, ding, ding, da, ding groove and other swing type feels and syncopate the snare and the bass, not just the snare, but let's do some chatter between the two of them and swing the snare, swing the ride, swing the bass, and create this conversation that takes place between all 3 of them. He was one of the legendary drummers that we can thank today for that type of thing. When you hear, Steve Smith or Dave Weckl or Brian Blade, any of those modern jazz guys playing that, it's Kenny that motivated them to do that. All right, and my last honorable mention is alive and well. I should mention Roy Haynes is also alive. Sadly, everybody on my list has passed away, except for Roy Haynes, still kicking, and of course, Billy Cobham. Billy Cobham, that guy, incredible power, big, strong behind the drums. You look at him and you just think, wow, we're going to get some incredibly intense drumming. Well, not just intense. This guy had all the dynamics. Could play super quiet, super loud, double bass, incredible polyrhythmic drum set technician. He was with the Mahavishnu Orchestra, where he really established himself in the forefront of early 70s jazz playing, which of course was evolving into more of a jazz fusion type feel out of after the post-bop era. All right, we have gone through an entire list. 9 fantastic drummers, 3 honorable mentions, equally fantastic. Like I said before, difficult to figure out where I'm going to put everybody. They're honorable mentions. They're honorable mentions, but really, they deserve to be in the list too. That's why I had to mention their names, because they're such legends and such innovators. And also, without all of these great drummers that I've just mentioned here today, we would not be playing what we play now. These are the guys that started it all. Somebody had to make all this stuff up, and these are the guys that did it. So you got to thank them for what you play today. But thank this guy the most, the greatest, the GOAT, the best of all time, Buddy Rich. Check out my reaction video that I just posted recently of me reacting to a 1970 Buddy Rich solo. I mean, I think I've said it all before. Buddy is the greatest of all time. Bernard Buddy Rich Trapp's the drum wonder. At one time, he was the second highest paid child star on the planet. Only Jackie Coogan, who you will know as Uncle Fester, actually, in the Addams Family as an adult. He acted his whole life. That's what he was famous for. Buddy was only behind him in terms of child star. Buddy Rich was playing in vaudeville at the age of 4, had his own band by the time he was 9, and of course his career just took off from there. He played with Tommy Dorsey, Frank Sinatra, and then of course he also had his own band. Now I want to tell you a story that one of Buddy Rich's friends told. He was a drum teacher in New York, and he knew Buddy quite well, and his name was Henry Adler. Now, Henry went to Joe Marcello, which was one of the very, very first bands that Buddy played with, and said, Joe, you've got to see this drummer. You're looking for a drummer, you've got to see this guy, Buddy Rich. And Joe's response was, well, who is he? I don't know about bringing him up on stage, and without seeing him play, whatever. And Henry said, look, trust me, this guy can play. So Joe says to him, well, can he play fast? And Henry's response was, faster than you, faster than anybody in the band. Can he play a solo? Yes, he can play a solo better than you, better than anybody in the band. Okay, so he begrudgingly allows Buddy to come up. Well, needless to say, Buddy blew him away, blew the audience away, and Joe had never seen an audience react when Joe gave Buddy a chorus, which is a section of the tune for a solo, just to Buddy, blew the audience away, blew Joe away. Joe hired him on the spot, and that launched Buddy's career playing with big bands. All right. Thank you very much for tuning in. That is my top 10 greatest jazz drummers of all time. Just a quick update. My instructional videos will be launching soon with my relaunch of my channel. I'm just waiting for that final piece of equipment, that Yamaha EAD10. And once that comes in, I'm going to be recording professional audio, professional video, and really upping my game in this YouTube world. I'm excited, really excited to launch my new videos, and with the upgraded equipment and stuff, it motivates me to want to play and put these videos out. I really love drumming, and I love doing these videos, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Keep drumming. I'll see you soon. Take care.